Today, the Environment Canterbury Commissioners have received the report and recommendations of the independent hearing panel on what is known as Plan Change 3 to the Land and Water Regional Plan, which is the third in the series that we are undertaking to populate the sub-regional chapters of the Land and Water Regional Plan. Plan Change 3 covers part of the Lower Waitaki South Coastal Zone Committee area. It relates specifically to the coastal part of the zone as distinct from the Waitaki Valley, and covers these streams and the Wainono Lagoon in particular in that part of the Lower Waitaki zone. The plan change was notified in April of last year. There were a number of submissions made to it, particularly by farming groups and by local people in the area. The hearings took place over quite a lengthy period of time, and the hearing panel's report and recommendations have just been received, and as a result of that hearing, there have been a number of changes made to the notified version of the plan change. One of those changes is to better identify, from a rule point of view in particular, the three areas into which this part of the zone have been divided, known as the Northern Streams area, which includes the Otaio River and the Makiki River catchments, and is characterised by rivers and streams flowing directly to the sea. Then there is the second area, which is the Wainono area, which includes all the water bodies from the Hook Beach Drain catchment to the Waihau River, which flow to or have a flow connection with the Wainono Lagoon. And the Wainono Lagoon is the distinguishing feature of this particular area. And the third key area is the Morven Sinclair's area, which includes the Morven Drain and Sinclair's Creek catchments. And the streams in this area also flow directly into the sea. So the plan has been improved in terms of its drafting to make those three areas more specifically provided for. Plan change, covers water quality and water quantity issues. Water quality issues throughout those three areas, and water quantity issues in relation to some of the groundwater areas at Otaio, Makiki, Waimati and Hook as well. As far as water quality matters are concerned, In the northern streams area, there is a catchment load for nitrogen losses that is fixed to achieve the freshwater outcomes for that area. The load allows for current land uses operating in what is described in this plan change as good farm practices, as distinct from good farm management practices, or management practices that are identified for the purposes particularly of Plan Change 5. So it's important to understand here that when we're talking about good farm practices, we're talking about the practices that are identified in this plan change specifically for that change. In the northern streams area, there is also a flexibility cap that allows for low nitrogen leaching uses to change land use and increase nutrient losses, now up to 15 kilograms per hectare. I think originally it was 10. And this provides flexibility for the low emitters without breaching the catchment loads. There is provision for the flexibility cap to be increased to 17 kilograms per hectare after 2025 if the freshwater outcomes in the area are met. So that's a qualification on that. In the Waiho-Wainono area, again, there is a catchment load set that is intended to achieve the freshwater outcome desired for Wainono Lagoon of a TLI of 6, at least 6 or less, ideally less. Again, the load provides for current land uses operating in accordance with good farm practices and provides for land use associated with consented irrigation schemes. Now, as far as this particular area is concerned, achieving the freshwater outcomes will depend very much, and the plan change acknowledges this, on augmentation of the Wainono Lagoon, provision for which is of course already made in the Waitaki catchment water allocation plan, which was itself the subject of a change earlier this year. There is also a flexibility cap that allows no nitrogen leaching land uses to change their land use and again increase up to 15 kilograms per hectare. And again, a higher flexibility cap would be available after 2025 if the freshwater outcomes are being met. In the Morven Sinclair's area, the plan also sets a catchment load that protects current groundwater quality and provides for current land uses. After the plan change was notified, but before the submissions were heard, a quite significant change was made to the computer model known as Overseer, which is used by this council and a lot of other people in New Zealand to calculate or predict nitrogen in particular losses below the root zone. And the figures that were originally in the plan change were based on calculations made under a previous version of Overseer. As a result of the new version coming into effect, those numbers changed and that resulted in people who were originally in a permitted activity status by virtue of the Overseer numbers, finding themselves outside of the permitted activity status as a result of the plan, as a result of the overseer change, but their farming practices of their farming had not changed at all. So that was a dilemma that was faced by the hearing panel, and as I said at the council meeting this morning, I think with the help of the community and some particularly useful guidance from various people, including some of our own staff, the panel was able to arrive at what is quite an elegant solution for this dilemma, whereby, in terms of this change as it's now going to be put in place, while the permitted activity rule still remains unchanged, where as a result of recalculations which are to be done by the regional council following changes to overseer, according to a protocol that's set out in the plan change, the numbers are increased in terms of losses, but those people who would have been in permitted activity are still within the new number. They can then obtain a consent to continue farming at the new number by way of what's known as a controlled activity consent. And the importance of that is from a procedural point of view, that the controlled activity application has to be granted and can only be subject to conditions that ensure adverse effects are covered. So in that way, people who are affected by, who want to continue farming without changing their farming methods or their farming activities, but are prejudiced by the change in the overseer figure, they will be able to continue to do that by this process. It's important to emphasise that one of the keys to the ultimate successful outcome of this plan change will be the augmentation of Wainono Lagoon, and that involves not only statutory processes but also non-statutory processes, which the Zone Committee that Tom is on are anxious to make progress with, and of course it depends also to an absolute extent on the Hunter Downs irrigation scheme proceeding in some form. There are also some water allocation provisions in this plan change relating to the Otaio, Makiki, Waimati and Hook groundwater zones, where there have been new surface water allocations in those areas, but groundwater takes are prohibited. In the future, all water permits will have annual volume conditions imposed on their renewal, or if a consent applies for a change of conditions, then those matters will be attended to. And there are opportunities within the plan change for existing water takes to switch from river takes and river-connected groundwater to deep groundwater to help protect flows or enhance flows in those streams, which is one of the issues in this part of the zone. There are provisions for transferring of surface and groundwater consents in certain circumstances. So that's a rundown of Plan Change 3. The decisions that we've made today will be notified publicly on the 1st of October, and from that date, Plan Change 3 as amended by this decision process will become the then legally enforceable and proposed plan change. There is a period of 15 working days from the 1st of October when appeals can be lodged to the High Court on questions of law only. When any appeals, if there are any, dealt with, then the Regional Council will be in a position to make the plan change fully operative as part of the Land and Water Regional Plan. And I want to pay a tribute to the work of the Zone Committee, who worked very hard on this matter, and to all the community of this particular part of our region who have been fully engaged in this process and have worked very hard to achieve the outcome that I've announced today. Tom, do you wish to say anything?
Just a few things, just reinforcing what Commissioner Skelton has said in regard to the community effort. People that stand out, or in organisations, but would like to pay particular tribute to the Runanga. I think they really put a tremendous emphasis on the cultural values around Wainono, and the community is brought into ensuring that we get a plan that really enhances the environmental outcomes and the cultural values that are exposed in that area. The local community in its entirety, but particularly the farming community who came together to actually have a very significant role to play in a very challenging zone which has got a very significant phosphorus as well as nitrogen issues in the clay downs that characterise the region. And with a very large variety of soil types and farming practices, managed to come as a community together to allow low emitters to increase, but also said high emitters, to allow that to happen, had to come down. And on top of that, to be able to facilitate the irrigation development through Hunter Downs for the economic well-being of the district is very, very significant. We'd just like to emphasise again what Peter had already said, that the plan is an incredibly important tool to achieve that, but the non-statutory work that is being done, particularly around control of phosphorus and riparian management, is incredibly important, and would like to acknowledge the government's contribution with their help around funding of freshwater initiatives at Wainono, as well as the Regional Council and regional initiatives, and just recently Te Mana o Te Wai money that we've just received from the government as well. And it's that entire package that will see the potential prosperity, particularly through with the expansion of Hunter Downs in a very rich agricultural community, but at the same time creating the environment that we all want to enjoy, and particular with the cultural reference to the local Runanga.
A couple of things perhaps to follow up on your comments, Tom, that either of you I'm sure could answer. We're talking about enablement of economic development, more irrigation, which I understand this plan will allow. So that will obviously lead to more intensive farming, I would imagine, and further nutrient issues. So how is that balance going to be reached through this planning process?
So the key area is that because we are dealing with two nutrients, particularly around the phosphorus and the nitrogen, then and also in a catchment that is very, very water short, then that becomes challenging because of the ephemeral nature of those coastal streams. So we've got a package that takes care of all of those things. We're allowing intensive agricultural to good farm practice, particularly around the nitrogen leaching, which is often less than it would be in other parts of Canterbury because of the nature of the soils. but a very significant part of the farming packages around riparian management and stock exclusion to ensure that we minimise the amount of phosphorus that is going into the receiving environment. On top of that, particularly around Wainono, there's a lot of emphasis being put on the potential creation of wetlands and planting and other things to act as a filter. And the restoration 2 years ago of the Wainono box is also very important. Must emphasise, particularly in the Wainono, around the augmentation. There's a guaranteed augmentation of a cubic of water through the Hunter Downs water consent, but I know that they're in discussion with the community to see if there's a management regime where they could use some of the irrigation infrastructure in the off-season to enable us to be able to put a greater amount of augmentation, which may deal with some of the historical phosphorus issues that we have on the bed of Wainono. So we believe we've got it's a pretty complex and extensive package, but I'm also pleased to say that particularly the farming community have been very much involved in this process. Testimony to the staff within Environment Canterbury that they led a caucusing initiative that the hearing commissioners required, and the farming community were quite responsible in helping define what some of the things are in the plan. But as a community, I know that they're already taking initiatives and to actually proactively go out and make sure that farmers are at good farm practice levels, and they will actually achieve the outcomes that the community is looking for.
And if I just add to that, that one of the other ways of achieving the outcomes that you referred to is through the setting of the catchment loads themselves, which have been calculated on to take into account the potential losses from the increased farming activity that could arise out of the Hunter Downs and the Waiho schemes. The Waiho schemes are already underway. I think it's important to remember that. And just adding to what Tom said about the augmentation, another important feature of that in terms of the recently changed water allocation plan is that water is available at all times. So it is not restricted if there are restrictions on other water takes. The water for that purpose is available even in the driest and lowest flows of the Waitaki catchment because of its importance. I mean, at the end of the day, the farming activities can only increase, I think, effectively if the augmentation does take place.
And Peter, you mentioned the opportunity for existing consent holders to switch takes from rivers to deep groundwater. Wouldn't it then follow that nitrate issues in the catchment could increase rather than decrease?
I don't.
You want to add that?
I don't believe that'll be the case. The swap can only be where we have existing farmers, so they are already irrigating.
Yeah.
And what we're doing with this provision is actually leaving more water in the surface water, and I guess providing the final allocation of deep water. One of the hopefully sought outcomes could well be that with Hunter Downs, if it is financially acceptable, that some of those people who are taking surface water and may go to deep groundwater actually may become a part of the Hunter Downs. And so they wouldn't actually add to a greater amount to the nutrient load in the catchment, and with farming practices may even come down.